side, City Hall, Eastgate, congestion pricing lawsuit. They got the podium here. They're going to start very soon. So you have Catherine Freed, former council member of the 1st District. You have a member of the media. You have Kyle, Bob Holden's team. Shout out to Bob Holden. We're live. So anybody out here just want, just in case I know, I just got the press conference this morning. The presser this morning. I'm supposed to be at, what's that spot? 23rd Street for Eric Box's press conference. But I'm not there because I'm down here. They gave me the lead like 25 minutes before. So I'm about to leave my house. I got the media. So Susan Lee's here. David Weprin. You got members of media. Freedom News is here. NBC, New York 1. Catherine Freed. There's a lot of. So we're going to go. They're going to it.
But it's the details of the bill, really.
We're going live. I know. The reason I'm going live is cold. I'm going to tag a lot of people in this stuff. I'm going to pin it so everybody knows what's going on. David Carr and the Secret Staff is coming down right now.
Testing.
Oh, I'm here. I was here. I was here, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, no.
I don't want to get in your way, but I gotta.
Yeah, no problem.
Michelle. Yes, I'm very glad.
Here.
Yeah. I was going to say the lady on the radio is like,
Happy you did too. You're not. Wake up.
press conference, and everybody was like,
I was like, we didn't even know Trevor's here. I don't know where I used to go. We're trying to get.
hello? Hey, start a roll on. Can you pull this congestion pricing pressor? All right, thanks, Eric. All right, thanks.
No free.
But I don't like it.
So first I'm going to do the picture. And now I'm going to do the video.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see it yet.
I'm going to do it one more time.
It's a scam.
Thank you.
Oh, ma'am, Ma'am.
And I don't know which jackets are falling off.
I mean, I don't know.
They have a nice photo. Well, you know.
What happened to phone?
Yes, no, I grabbed the phone.
There's two cameras, two in just a second away. We're just a couple minutes. We're waiting for two more cameras to set up. Thank you. And if everybody can get really nice and tight together, like uncomfortably close, that would be perfect. Yeah. For today.
Yeah, try to make it close as possible. Try to get in this big, make it look like a lot of people here because they are.
You can move around and take the photos. We have to be in a fixed position on the tripod.
Catherine, Jack is here.
Oh, Jack. Hi, Jack. Hey. Hi, Jack.
How are you? How are you?
Nope, we're just setting up.
Okay.
We're just dropping the mic.
Sean, what's up?
All right, so Jack, you're on third.
Jack, you're on third. You're on third. You're the lead off. You're the lead off. You're on lead off.
Thank you. Everybody all set?
No, we need.
What? Almost. Not yet, Catherine. Sorry.
What?
There's one more camera just checking in. Yep.
Last minute.
All right, say no congestion pricing. Say no to congestion pricing. No to congestion pricing.
No congestion pricing.
Yeah, the chant. Should say yo.
Wait, one more camera, guys.
How about not unlimited app cards? No unlimited app cards. Electric or not? Oh my God. Oh,
How we doing? Everybody set? Still good? Yep. Oh, sure. Good?
Everyone looks cool. Get to do testing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bill, we ready?
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. All right, everybody. Good morning. My name is Catherine Freed. I live in the Lower East Side, but this group is New Yorkers Against the Congestion Pricing Tax. And I want to emphasize that we are all New Yorkers who have come together because we all oppose this congestion pricing plan. And we filed a class action, we represent every neighborhood across the city. I, by the way, am a former council member and a former New York State Supreme Court judge. First thing I want to do is thank Councilmember Bob Holt, who will speak later, but they provided us with the mic and the podium, so thank you. And the first person I'm going to introduce is our lawyer, Jack Lester.
Yeah.
Hey, I guess I can do it.
Jack.
Jack, can you spell your name, please?
Yes. J-A-C-K-L-E-S-T-E-R. Jack Lester. Good morning. Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. The reason we filed this case as a class action is because hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers will be adversely impacted by the environmental consequences of congestion pricing and also the financial burdens that will be imposed upon working New Yorkers. The review process, which was supposed to adhere to environmental laws under the National Environmental Policy Act and also state rules under the State Administrative Procedure Act, failed. The city, the state, the federal government did not do the proper review to protect the very citizens that were supposed to be protected by the environmental laws of this nation, both federal and state. So that's why we bring this case as a class action, so that we can resolve those issues that are negatively affecting so many New Yorkers: emergency workers, police officers, nurses, firefighters, who will be taxed in a way that has not been evaluated by the state or federal government. So this must be done before congestion pricing is instituted, if it's instituted at all. And we joined the New Jersey litigation and the litigation initiated by the United Federation of Teachers. So we're here today to show support for those other lawsuits and to bring in the entire community of New York City.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jack. We're going to take questions later, but first we're going to hear from some of the individual plaintiffs from the neighborhoods to talk about why they're here and why they're opposing the congestion pricing plan. First person we will hear from is Aixa Torres, and Aixa is the president of Smith House's Tenant Association, and she lives right next to the FDR Drive. I just want to point out, be nice to her, because New York Magazine called her one of the 15 most influential New Yorkers that no one has ever heard of. Well, those of us in the downtown have heard of her. So, Aixa.
Please spell your first name. Aixa, A-I-X-A, Torres. Good morning, buenos dias. I'm here representing the residents, not only myself, but the residents of Alfred E. Smith houses and the public housing residents that live alongside the FDR Drive. We are the second largest city in New York City, and we are totally ignored. This would be devastating, absolutely devastating. At least, definitely for Smith houses. We live on ground zero. We have residents constantly going to the hospital. We have 9/11 respiratory issues in Alfred E. Smith alone. The upper spectrum of the NYCHA residents have asthma. And so now we're going to have a parking lot and more. And I can look out the window, the back window, right? And I see the FDR Drive and the Brooklyn Bridge. A nice sight. However, you're talking about the lives of people, the quality of life. And there's a certain anger in me about how we are treated as second-class citizens, that nobody wants to hear what we have to say, or or how we say it, no matter how we say it, if we say it nicely, we have to take the course of always going to court. And I speak for Alfred E. Smith because I had to take NYCHA to court to get things done in our development because nobody would listen to us. And so one more time, we're going to go to court and we're going to fight because this is unjust. And you're on top of that, it is going to create an economic hardship on the residents that live in public housing, starting with me. I have serious medical issues, right? And for me to travel, that means that I now have to pay, if I don't take the public housing, or I can't, I have to pay congested pricing. I live on a fixed income. I worked all my life. I am now retired, right? But my God, this is insane. Like, hit me one more time with something else that I have to pay for, right? I pay enough for my medications, trust me. And so the issue is not only about me, but it is about all the residents who live alongside the rivers, FDR. It's going to be a parking lot. I went there the other day, I was there, actually yesterday, and I said, oh my goodness. You know, and this is nothing. It hasn't even started. So when it starts, what's going to happen? And so one more time, I'm going to go on the record, I'm going to go to court, and I'm going to fight because it's not right and it's not just. And I thank you for your help.
Hey, thank you so much, Aisha. Another person, Lower East Side. Someone else is Trevor Howard. Trevor Holland. Can't believe I said that way. Trevor Holland. Sorry, Trevor. Trevor's the president of the Two Bridges Tower Renters Association. He's also the chairperson of CV3's Harbor Commission Committee, and he also lives near the FDR Drive. Trevor, he's also really tall.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. I'll speak up to get some energy in here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trevor Holland. I'm president of the Two Bridges Tower Resident Association. I also live along the FDR, which is one of the most affected areas by the MTA's congestion pricing plan. I am also a member of the MTA's Environmental Justice Stakeholder Working Group, but I feel that my voice and the voices of my neighborhood have been ignored and dismissed. The MTA's own modeling showed that congestion pricing will increase on the FDR Drive by up to 26% between 10th Street and the Brooklyn Bridge. This will directly affect my neighborhood, which is already burdened by pollution, noise, and the lack of green space. As one of the only designated environmental justice areas in the Central Business District, we are entitled to fair treatment and meaningful involvement in the environmental decision making. But the MTA has failed to uphold the principles of environmental justice. It is shameful that the MTA has said in public meetings that yes, the Lower East Side along the FDR will have more traffic and pollution, but the rest of the city will have less. The MTA also considers the legitimate concerns of low-income residents and people of color who live in the Lower East Side as hot air, as was quoted this morning by the MTA press person. This is an insult to our dignity and our right to a healthy environment. We already suffer from high rates of asthma, cardiovascular disease, and cancer due to the existing sources of pollution in our neighborhood, such as the Department of Sanitation Truck Depot, the Emergency Medical Center, the Fire Department Truck Depot, the DFO, and the DOT asphalt plant, all located underneath the FDR. The MTA's plan will only worsen our health and our quality of life. Add insult to injury, the MTA offers absolutely no financial mitigation whatsoever. None. How is it that a plan that is supposed to reduce traffic and pollution actually increasing traffic and pollution in one of the only environmental justice areas in the tolling zone? How is that fair? How is that just? And how is that legal? We demand the MTA consider its congestion pricing plan and listen to the voices of the people who are most impacted by it. We demand that the MTA conduct a comprehensive environmental impact assessment and a health impact assessment of its plan and provide adequate mitigation measures for the affected communities. We demand the MTA respect the principles of environmental justice and the rights of people of color and low-income residents who live in the Lower East Side. We are not hot air. We are human beings who deserve a clean and safe environment. We will not be silent, we will not be ignored, we will not be sacrificed. Thank you.
Thank you, forever. And by the way, you hear everyone talk about how we have projected increased pollution and congestion on the Lower East Side. I want to make a point. Those figures that we're using, those projections that we're pointing to, are the MTA's figures. We didn't come up with figures. We're looking at their figures, and they know, and they admit they're going to increase our pollution. In some cases, as much as 19 to 26%. So I just want to make that clear. Now I call the next speaker, Lee Berman. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Lee Berman, Democratic District Leader from the Lower East Side and a lifelong Lower East Side resident. Thank you all to the community members who are here today, and a special thank you to the bipartisan coalition of elected officials who have shown courage in coming out today. We are all aware of how the MTA has allowed more than $750 million to slip through their hands by fare and toll evasion over the last year. They want to make up for their incompetence on the backs of the working middle class New Yorkers that are the lifeblood of this city. The MTA lies when it says that congestion pricing will have a positive impact on the Central Business District and that it will help the environment. Their own environmental report shows that congestion pricing will actually increase pollutants in this very community, harming all those that live next to the FDR Drive between the Brooklyn Bridge and 10th Street, an environmental justice community of the poor and the working class. But the MTA dismisses that. According to the MTA, our lives don't matter. Those of us who live in Lower Manhattan should not have to pay an additional tax on top of the exorbitant taxes and fees we are already forced to pay. We know that many of our neighbors require the use of a car, whether to get to or from their jobs, to drop off their children at school, or pick their kids up from after-school programs, so that they can keep their jobs, and because they have no better opportunities for transportation on the all too frequently unsafe mass transit, or because taking a family of 4 or 6 on buses and trains for 2 hours each way is impossible or too expensive for them. And those that need to travel to Flushing or Sunset Park's Chinatowns or Williamsburg for kosher food, the MTA says, too bad, pay up. Every Lower Manhattan resident will now have to pay higher prices for everyday goods and services. Our local bodegas, pharmacies, restaurants, and supermarkets are going to pass the increased fees they have to pay for deliveries onto those who can least afford it, especially those of us in public housing, every one of us on fixed incomes, and every one of us who lives paycheck to paycheck. To claim that the MTA to claim that this plan will help the environment is preposterous. To claim that the MTA will not squander the billions of dollars from this tax like they have for generations is ludicrous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lee. All right, next to address us will be Assembly Member David Weprin. I just want to point out and give him credit because he had the courage to be one of the first elected to come forward, and he's from the state legislature. So, David.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Good morning. I represent the district in Eastern Queens, which has often been referred to as a transit desert, where many individuals do not have a subway in walking distance. In some cases, it's miles to the nearest subway. I've been one of the most vocal critics of congestion pricing for over 20 years. I served in the New York City Council for 8 years, where I chaired the Finance Committee. I've now been in the New York State Assembly for 14 years, and I've been fighting the congestion pricing tax, I'll refer to it as a tax, for over 20 years. And I say a tax because this plan or any other of the plans in the past have not dealt with the problem of congestion in Manhattan. But this is certainly an additional tax on many people that cannot afford it. This latest tax to fund the MTA, by the way, the MTA is, as was pointed out, is totally unaccountable and untrustworthy caretaker of the public funds. What happened to the $10 billion in emergency funding that they got from the federal government during COVID. That money was gone before you could count it. The financial burdens associated with congestion pricing will shut down businesses across New York City or force them to pass on the added cost to consumers. All this after years of supply chain disruption and record inflation while we are still recovering from the COVID-19 crisis. Simply put, New Yorkers cannot afford the imposition of this latest tax. Public transit options are not available for many parts of New York City, including eastern Queens. A trip into Manhattan can require taking multiple bus and subway lines. There are even fewer options available to senior citizens, the sick, and the disabled communities, as the MTA, by its own admission, is largely ADA inaccessible despite years of promises to invest in accessible options. Security breakdowns are all too common in our public transit system, and even those who can use the subway may be disinclined to do so out of safety concerns. Congestion pricing has been sold to the public as a way to cut down traffic, but even the MTA is now admitting that congestion pricing will simply push traffic to other corners of New York City, which would adversely impact new communities in Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, among others. For all these reasons and many more, I have added my name to the list of co-plaintiffs filing this lawsuit against the imposition of congestion pricing, or as I say, congestion tax. I will continue to stand up for my neighbors and my constituents for whom public transit options are not accessible, safe, convenient, or affordable. If congestion pricing is imposed on New York, the residents and businesses community of Queens will suffer while the MTA squanders the ill-gotten gains of this new revenue stream. And I would just add that this is probably the worst time in the over 20 years that I've been fighting this tax to impose it. People are still recovering from COVID-19. The theater district is recovering. Restaurants are recovering. Small businesses are recovering. Now is the worst time. I have introduced a bill in the legislature to delay the consideration of this tax until at least 2019. But in any case, I'm sorry, at least 2029. Back to the I've been working on it since 2001. But in any case, this is not the time, and this is not going to reduce congestion, but it is going to be a tax to those individuals and middle-class people that cannot afford it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. And next, I want to introduce Councilmember Bob Holden. He's the co-chair of the City Council Common Sense Caucus, and many of their members have joined us, and we really want to thank him for the help. And Bob, step forward.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, David. You have been a leader in opposing congestion tax, scam tax, by the way. But imagine charging New Yorkers who pay our taxes, who pay ridiculous taxes. Imagine another tax to penalize us for where we live. It's insane that we have to pay to move around this city and pay a ridiculous cost, a ridiculous tax. Now, I just want to say, my council members, my common sense council members who are here, I just want to read off. We've all joined as plaintiffs. Again, myself, we have Joe Borelli. Is Joe here? He's the minority leader, Christy Marmorato. We also have Vicky Paladinos, who's here, right behind me. Vicky, hiding behind me. Joanne Ariola, Susan Zhang, Kalman Yeager, Ina Vernikoff, and David Carr is right here. We all joined. 9 members of the Common Sense Caucus joined, and we expect also other members, but let's not hold our breath in the council to have them step forward. It takes courage. It takes courage. But let me just go over a couple of things. Why isn't there an environmental impact study on such a, it's going to push, obviously, pollution around to other neighborhoods? Why not? You know why? Because they might not like the results, the MTA. They wouldn't like the results. They did an environmental assessment study, which is essentially a rubber stamp. That's how serious the MTA is. They can't solve fare beaters. They can't solve that. They can't design a turnstile that works. You're going to trust these people with additional money of our, and people, again, as a senior citizen, and I am, it's hard to admit sometimes, but I am a senior citizen, and I don't want to pay a tax to go to the hospital. And that's where my hospitals are, by the way. That's where my parents' hospitals are. So how are we going to afford this? What we won't do is we just won't come into Manhattan. I think that's what some people like. But again, the businesses are not going to like it. You're going to see a huge problem with this. They're already putting the infrastructure around for the scam tax, and I'm going to call it that because it is. We really have to beat this. So I want to thank, again, Catherine so much and Susan, everybody else, and David, he's been like heckled when he goes to some of these things, and he stands up. He never backs down. So I want to thank you, David, certainly for standing up. But David, you want to come to this? David Clark.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone for putting this together, including our co-chair of the Common Sense Caucus, Bob Holden, as well as two distinguished council alums, the Honorable Kathy Freed and Assemblyman Weprin. I thank them for their ongoing efforts in this issue. This is the second litigation that I'm now supporting. I joined the lawsuit with the Borough President of Staten Island, Vito Pasella, and the United Federation of Teachers in their fight. And so this is a all-party, all-New Yorker effort. New Yorkers of all different backgrounds and political persuasions across the 5 boroughs are coming to oppose this because, as Councilmember Holden and Assemblyman Weprin have said, this is a scam tax. The reality is a congestion pricing plan, in the ideal sense, is supposed to deter you from coming in by car and choose a mass transit effort, right? A mass transit alternative. But that assumes you have a mass transit alternative that can get you here conveniently. Most New Yorkers do not have that option. I represent Staten Island, the definition of a transit desert. They do not have that option. Many other New Yorkers in other boroughs have to drive to get to work on time. And so they are those who can least afford to pay it. And so the reality, this is not about getting people to choose a bus or a subway that is already convenient for them. This is simply about raising revenue for an agency, for an authority that has mismanaged public monies. Instead of choosing to build vanity projects, they should have been focusing on core issues like actually fixing the signalization system for the subways. That's a core mission requirement. So they claim that they need this money in order to do things like that, but they had the money in the past and chose to spend it on other options. And so they're coming to New Yorkers again who are already paying fares, who already are switching to a non-Metro card system that doesn't have the discount benefits previously offered as yet, and that are already being taxed out of their homes and their neighborhoods, or already being taxed when they go to buy basics. So they're being asked to pay more. The answer is always more. When will it be enough? And the answer from those in power at the MTA is never. They're content to continue to ask people to dip into their pockets to pay this ridiculous tax. And that's what it is. So I'm very proud here to stand with New Yorkers from all parts of the political spectrum to oppose congestion pricing today. Thank you.
One last.
Good morning, everybody. And here we are once again. I want to say thank you for the bipartisan effort that's being put forward. Let's understand something very clearly here. New Yorkers do not want this congestive pricing. This is absolutely ludicrous. We've talked about this now for the last 2 years while I've been in council, and this is a tax on the middle class. It's been brought up here again today, how people are leaving here in droves. The bottom line is they don't want you owning a car. They do not want you coming. If you own a car, you you are committing some sort of sin. Okay? So we want to look at killing our small businesses, even worse than what they already are. And let me read something here. You know, New York State bailed out the MTA in 23 last year at the price of $1.3 billion, a bailout for the black hole known as the MTA. Everybody talks about the need to improve public transit, and we do. But simply throwing more and more money down the black hole of a broken system is not the answer. It never worked in the past, and it's not going to work now. For some reason, we keep doing it and expecting a miracle. We are not going to see that miracle, and we're shocked when we don't see it. The MTA needs to demonstrate, finally, a line-by-line item, how they are spending billions and billions of our money. And they want more? The answer to that is no. The public has spoken out. We stand here in bipartisan leadership. You may not, and this may not happen. So we're going to do what we need to do. This needs to be stopped. The middle class is being driven out of the city, and that's exactly what they want. And our activists about the Green New Deal and everything about green, well, I heard enough here today to understand that this is not going to help anybody who's looking at anything in the green sense. I thank you very much.
Councilor Zhang.
Thank you everyone to coming in the cold day. And everyone know, probably most of people know, I have the Brooklyn Chinatown. The residents in Brooklyn Chinatown, most of them moved from Manhattan Chinatown. They do have family members here. They do have business here. And they do transfer their goods from Manhattan Chinatown to Brooklyn Chinatown. And in my district, we have large of senior citizens in my district, and they don't speak English. They have to see their doctors in Manhattan Chinatown, which their doctor did not move with them to Brooklyn Chinatown. And it's very difficult, especially in these snow days, very hard to walk in the sidewalk. And you ask those seniors to take subway to Manhattan Chinatown to see their doctor. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's good for their health? No. And we need really a solution to help people, not just increase the tax for the seniors. And also a lot of business in my district, they need to travel maybe 2 times to Manhattan Chinatown to pick up the supplies, and for $30 a trip, twice a day. That's going to kill their business. And we talk about protect small business owners. Why we forget about not increase their tax? Increase the tax for small business owners and increase the tax to our senior citizens. That's not correct way to help our city. We need a real solution, not by increase the tax to those working class people. And I came out strongly against the congestion price. And I hope everyone here to stand with me, and we'll fight together. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. Okay, I guess for good reason. Yeah.
You said that you got your information from the MTA's own data.
That's correct.
Their own data also suggests there would be 150,000 fewer vehicles per day under congestion pricing. So under that data, wouldn't the air improve for 95% of the city, and wouldn't there be a net positive for millions of New Yorkers?
Yeah, I'm going to let our lawyer answer it, and then go ahead. Jack, answer first.
I think it's a good question, and it's a fair question. I think the issue in the lawsuit that we filed and all the other lawsuits that were filed is the fact that they did an environmental assessment. The environmental assessment weighed all of the factors, but the conclusion that the environmental assessment came to was that overall, if you look at the overall picture, the consequences would be negative environmentally. So if you look at some aspects...
Not for the city. That's not what the conclusion is.
Yes. Let me address that because another good question. So we represent environmental justice communities. South Bronx, East Harlem, Lower East Side. So if you look at the overall picture, perhaps, there would be some positive environmental consequences. But that's not the purpose of the National Environmental Policy Act. The purpose is to look at the negative consequences and mitigate those consequences. And if you have East Harlem, South Bronx, Lower East Side that have been so devastated by this policy, and there's no mitigation, that wipes out any conclusions that there would be some positive impacts. So what we're saying here is not that the overall picture is negative, but that the fact that there are so many negative consequences, they needed to do an environmental impact statement. And they failed to do that. And why? Because of what everyone is saying today. Because if they looked at the overall picture, they would have had to have presented alternatives, mitigation, and they didn't do that because this was a rush to get this through completion. There's still a long way to go, and based on these lawsuits and the other procedures that are left through the State Administrative Procedure Act, this may not come to fruition. So you're correct, there are some positives, but overall, you have to look at the people who will be negatively affected, particularly environmental justice communities.
Yeah, by the way, they also say some people will win, some people will lose. Well, how come it's always the people who can least afford it, who are stuck in the bottom, are the ones who always lose?
And the reality is that in terms of regional traffic, as by the MTA's own study, will decrease by somewhere between 0.3% to actually going up 0.1%. So at the end of the day, those 150 cars end up somewhere else. And this is before they lifted the cap on for-hire vehicles coming in. So it's really just replacing private car ownership with private cars, period.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I could go on and on.
When we talk about environmental justice, just so you know, for the record, Alfred E. Smith houses, if they were to have done a study, all our grounds are going to be changed because we still have contamination from 9/11. I don't want to tell you how many funerals I have had to go because of 9/11. So our grounds are already contaminated. So is it because it's public housing, you're willing to kill the patients? And for the record, the Alfred E. Smith residents, the original, all the ones were all veterans, right? Who fought for this country, and now their families are getting killed because nobody cares. And so this lawsuit is about justice. Thank you.
There's also, may I just say, please, when you talk about justice, there's also other justice. Don't forget, this divides the whole borough of Manhattan in half. It's everything below 60th Street. That's every little residential street in Little Italy, in Chinatown, in Chelsea, in Midtown. All those people have to pay to go home. How would you feel if you had to pay to go home? Anywhere they go out of that zone, in order to return to that zone, they have to pay. That's why we have all the people. We have a load of people from Midtown. We have the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side. We have Harlem. We have the Bronx. Because everybody is affected by this negatively, and it will kill business in that area as well. All of your destination restaurants will be hurt. Broadway will be hurt. And of course the downtown hospitals where people need to go, that's really going to be a real hardship. So take that in mind. Everybody is affected.
Yeah, and by the way, don't forget they did most of these surveys prior to when COVID hit. The earth has changed since that time. New York has changed. We have a 20% commercial office vacancy rate. All the areas of the city that depend on tourism Chris, or like Chinatown, Little Italy, Broadway, they're all down. They've never come back, and now they're getting socked with this.
Are any small business owners a part of this lawsuit that
Yes,
exists?
yes. Sorry, some people weren't able to make it today, but
Yes, we have been.
Is it working? Yeah.
Is there a chance of consolidating this lawsuit with the one from UFT and Staten Island?
You want to do that, Jack? You want me to do it? Go ahead.
It's very possible. That'll be up. There are cases filed in both the Eastern District and the Southern District and the District in New Jersey. So there could be a special master appointed to consolidate all these various lawsuits and see if it could be resolved.
I know that there are two in New Jersey. They already consolidated
Correct.
with the main.
So there are two in New Jersey, there are two in the Southern District, and one in the Eastern District. But we're the only class action for New York.
Is there a sense of a court that will actually hold a hearing and set a date to give everyone clarity about whether this thing is going to go or not, and how do we find that out?
In a perfect world, that would happen. So these cases have just been filed, and the hope is that there'll be some administrative clarity to dealing with all of these lawsuits in a comprehensive way. I think that's the hope.
You got about 3 months until they really start ramping up. Why wait so long to file this lawsuit? People have been showing up to rallies about congestion pricing in favor of it. Why wait so long?
Well, we had to balance two factors. Why wait so long, or why preempt the end of the process? So the end of the process is not going to occur for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. The other issue was they just came out with the finding of negative impacts recently, and also there have been public hearings since then through the state procedures. So we had to kind of balance. Is it too late or is it too early? And the government's going to argue both. That on the one hand, you're too late. On the other hand, we haven't finished the process. I think the timing is correct now, because now there's still a couple of months to go before they figure out what tolling process they're going to use and how they're going to implement this. And there's still time to reform the process. But fundamentally, all the lawsuits are opposed to the concept of congested pricing. So that's the issue, to try to prevent it from coming into play.
I also want to state I think there was a hope that the Mobility Review Board would actually be listening to the people of the city of New York and surrounding communities, that this didn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And so it was only when they finally came forward with their proposed tolling mechanism that a majority of New Yorkers even woke up to the fact that they were going to pay this tax. There was still a belief that it wasn't going to affect them. And people are finally understanding what's happening here, how regressive this tax is, the negative effect it's going to have. David Mack, who's a long-standing member of the MTA, when this proposal came before them, said this proposal will kill Manhattan below 60th Street. He is a member of the MTA. Samuelson, who was on the board of the MRB, resigned in protest over what was done. Another member of the MTA even says now that what is proposed in terms of the economics of this plan will not even produce what they said it was supposed to do. So now it's time for all New Yorkers to wake up and for the press to help us to alert everybody to what is happening here. The architect of this plan has already come forward to say it doesn't work. So why are we going forward with something that is environmentally untested, unproven, and unsound? We need to bring this to the attention of everyone, especially our electeds, and have this reversed. There is still time to do this, and that is what we are asking for. We're asking for a rational review of the environmental effects, because we feel confident that if the environmental assessment is done, this plan will go by the wayside. An environmental impact statement, it's very different from an environmental assessment.
Okay, one last thing. We want to hear from our president of the New Yorkers Against Congestion Pricing Tax, Susan Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to emphasize Yorkers Against Congestion Pricing Tax is a citywide coalition. We are made up of 13 members from various neighborhoods in New York City, from the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, Queens, Brooklyn, downtown Manhattan. We have 34 plaintiffs in this class action lawsuit, a citywide class action lawsuit with small business owners. We have seniors, we have parents who live in the Bronx who bring their children to school in Lower Manhattan. We also have residents in East Harlem. We have residents in Lower East Side, all environmental justice communities. The EPA came out with a study that demonstrated that pollution will increase as a result of congestion pricing because they will push the traffic to the FDR Drive and the Cross Bronx Expressway. We have elected officials from the Common Sense Caucus, a bipartisan effort supporting our class action lawsuit. Therefore, this sets us apart from all the other lawsuits that's been filed because we represent all New Yorkers from various walks of life in New York City. Thank you so much. I know it's a cold day. Thank you so much for staying here. And I'm sure we have others that are happy to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
That's it.